Hello, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Orísun Talks 5. This is the last show until we break for our summer, but don't worry, we'll be back in September, but we're just going to take a pause. We'll be working on other projects, so just keep following us on our socials to keep up to date with what we're up to. Lots of you will know, if you've been tuning in over the past months, that I'm Sharina, founder of Orísun Productions. And Orísun is a platform for creatives, Black creatives, to showcase their talents in a non-stereotypical way, free of stereotypes and racism, if you like. So that's what we're about. And we are really excited today because we've got some cracking guests on the show this evening. The first guest I'd like to introduce is a fixture on our screens as Cherie in EastEnders. She's British born to Jamaican parents, graduate of Lambda, and she has graced our screens and stages in many, many productions. On TV, she's been in Surgical Spirit. She was Estelle Vere on BBC soap opera Doctors. She was, as I've said, she's Cherie, currently Truman in EastEnders. But she made her professional debut playing Viola in 12th Night for the Northumberland Touring Company. And she made her television debut as Sharon in the 1984 television film Star of the Roller Skate Disco. She then worked extensively on television, theatre, radio, and film before her interest in access issues led her, check this, to take a break and study British Sign Language. She's a friend and supporter of Orísun Productions. Please welcome Suzette Llewellyn. Hi, Suzette. Hello. Our next guest is, along with Suzette, another stalwart of stage and screen. She is a founding member, along with Suzette, of the all-female theatre troupe, the BB Crew. She has graced our television screens and main stages, playing a wide range of characters. Her career has taken her from the West End of London to Wales Millennium Centre. She's a proud Cardiffian, I should mention also. She'll be cross if I don't mention that. She has currently a radio show, Sunday Morning with Colin Jackson, and that's about to start its fourth series on BBC Radio Wales. She has had television appearances on Brookside. She did a long stint on BBC's Casualty, and more recent appearances in Vera, Doctor Who, Hold the Sunset. Please welcome Suzanne Packer. Hi,
hello.
Suzanne.
Hi,
welcome.
Serena.
So our final guest this evening was born in Birmingham and raised in London. He's an actor and writer who's appeared on stage, TV and film. He graduated from Sussex University with a degree in politics and a short career in a merchant bank, believe it or not. He then had a prominent role. He had a prominent role opposite Jake Gyllenhaal in Prince of Persia, The Sands of Time. He has been very busy lately, guys, with roles on Pine Gap on Netflix, Channel 4's It's a Sin, Doctor Who, and Small Axe, Red, White and Blue, playing Kenneth Logan, the father of Leroy Logan. Please welcome Steve Toussaint.
Hello.
Hi, welcome everybody. It is wonderful to have you all here. It's really, I'm so excited about this show. I wonder if we can start, please, by asking Suzette and Suzanne about still breathing, because we all know last year George Floyd's death, killing, sparked protests all over the world. And all of us responded to that in lots of different ways. You, the two of you, did something very particular. So please, Suzette, you start. Tell us about Still Breathing.
Yes, You Are Still Breathing, 100 Voices is an anthology that Suzanne and I have put together of, as it says, 100 voices of various people of African descent who live in this country. Not all of them actually live in this country, but we did that, put this anthology together because we were speaking with, you mentioned the BB crew, with other members of the BB crew about our response, or how we've been responding to the George Floyd murder, which had occupied, I don't think there was anybody who wasn't occupied by it. And particularly as somebody of African descent, that really just pierced very sharply. And the repercussions and the ripples from that were, for me, were kind of unexpected in a way, because we've seen things like that before. But how this seemed to have operated on everybody, we just spoke about that. And basically, Still Breathing, we've spoken to politicians, actors. Obviously, we're actors. We reached out to a lot of actors, but we didn't just want it to be actors. So we have people from the health service, people in law, people from all different walks of life who've given their testimony in whichever way they wanted. That's how we asked them just to respond. So we have some artwork in the book as well. And yeah, basically that's what Still Breathing is. And it'll be launched it's up on the 24th of June. So next month it'll be released.
It seems like a very personal project then. So Suzanne, what was the sort of emotional driver for you to want to edit this book, put this book together?
Yeah, I think that's the word, actually, Sharina. It was really emotional. And I think that's where we instantly connected when we were discussing, having watched George Floyd's murder, how it was churning up so many emotions. And it was quite interesting. Sue said that when we actually spoke together, we actually, I think for the first time, we allowed ourselves to talk about how racism had directly impacted us. And of course, you'd be a robot for that not to feel that, make you. And it came, and there was a lot of hurt, there was a lot of anger, there was a lot of internalized shame. There was so much in our lovely discussion. Luckily, we've been dear friends for over 30 years now. So it was a really great platform. I know I shouldn't say that, Suze. 15 years.
We'll edit that out later.
So it was a very safe space for us to talk about how we felt. But I think the key difference was we didn't just want to hold those emotions, especially the painful ones. And we wanted to transform those into something that was creative and positive. And that was it. And the idea arose out of that. Well, how do we do that? And we are creatives. And so the idea for a book seemed almost perfect. And it's, as Sue said, on the 24th of June, everyone will be able to hold it in their hands or listen to it in an audiobook. So that's pretty much the start.
That's wonderful. I mean, I'm honored to have been approached and, contributed a little tiny one of those 100 voices. But what you say about, the fact that we've all felt these emotions, but we have coping mechanisms, don't we? And and for me, just like you said, when George Floyd was murdered, it sort of gave me permission to voice those in a way that I hadn't really voiced them before. And yes, it was very powerful and moving. Steve, I mean, of course, it affected everybody, black and white. Mm-hmm. What was your personal reaction to the George Floyd murder?
Well, I wish it had been as constructive as Suzette and Suzanne have just described. Mine was just the old rage, to be honest. I mean, I've had this, race has been a central part of my life, most of my life, ever since I was aware that there was a difference, ever since I was 15 and was in my bedroom and knew that by the time I got to this age, there would be no more racism, because I knew that it would just be young people, the people who were my peers, who would be in charge, and the racism was just the old people. And so when this thing continued, when we had Philando Castile or Tamar Rice or Mark Duggan or any of these things, you just keep going, how is this still happening? Because they tell us that we are policed by consent. But I didn't consent to the wholesale murder of people of color. Who did? And what constantly happens is people wring their hands together and go, this must never happen again. We must learn from this. And then the next day it happens again. So I don't want to start anything, seditious here, but I do start thinking something more drastic has to be done. We can't just have a talking shop and then sort of relax and it happens again and we just go, oh my goodness, it's awful, it's awful. I feel like we have to have a fundamental reordering of our system, of our way of thinking, and of particularly of how we are policed. And that is not just in the States, that is here. During the lockdown, when this thing was happening, I had a conversation with my cousins and they said to me, do you think if the police were routinely armed in this country, you would still be here? And they answered that because they know who I am. And I said, no, I wouldn't be. Because of how I present. I'm 6'3", I'm a dark-skinned black man. And I find it very hard, particularly the older I get, to be particularly to cow myself to these people when I think that they're doing wrong, when I think, no, you're in service of me. So you don't speak to me like that. You speak to me with respect. And so I guess I'm very lucky that with my interactions that I've had with them, they were not armed, so that whatever fears they have of people that look like me, they couldn't exercise them with a pistol. But to answer the question initially, I was just full of rage, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, I think we all sort of went through those sort of 4 or 5 stages of grief, because and one of them is rage, anger. I definitely identify with that, especially as a mother of a teenage son. That feeling you get every time they leave the house. Right. It's that sort of holding of your breath to, hoping that they're going to come back safe. Thankfully, he always has. But yeah, so this piece of this body of work is so important. And what's interesting is the sort of shift that's happening in the creative industry as well. What has been your personal experience of that since the resurgence of Black Lives Matter? Do you think that there's been a real sort of tectoral shift of sort of repositioning of the powers that be to encourage diversity?
I think sadly, no. Suzanne.
Oh, well, interestingly, part of my experience during lockdown has been to work at Royal Welsh College of Theatre and Drama. And a couple of friends of mine and family members said to me, do you think if we hadn't had the such a visibility in terms of protest, initiated by Black Lives Matter, the movement, whether I would have been offered the job? And it's a question I've really considered. And I did have a relationship with the college before, so I would dip in and take some classes, teach some classes. But I think the fact that a lot of bodies, institutions were starting to look at how much inclusivity and diversity was, front facing, I think that pushed that movement to employ me. And I think that's definitely been replicated around the country, because you cannot now ignore the fact that your room is full of white faces. That will never, and part of the reason for the book is we don't want this to be a flash in the pan. We want to keep that gaze alive, the eyes wide open. So from a creative point of view, yes, I think it's made a massive difference. It's certainly to my personal life. I'm now a senior lecturer in acting at Royal Welsh College, which I wasn't before. And I have an opportunity to do what I didn't get, which was to be the person that other people can look at and say, you look like me, maybe I can do what you're doing. I never got that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's
that's
a big
important.
responsibility. And I'm really trying to step up to that every time I'm in front of the students or in the staff room.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's so important that that seeing someone like yourself doing the thing that you aspire to, it's it is so powerful. But Suzette, you were going to.
I think there have been companies that have, when people put up little black squares or people have said things, but I don't feel there has been enough follow through on some of that. I mean, there was even some pushback there was one particular company, I can't remember, but there was an actor who said something about, they put up a black square saying, oh, we empathize. And then there was one actress who actually said, well, then apologize to all the people who you treated like this. And they wrote this thing down. They called them out. So there is a feeling that people want to jump onto some sort of, I want to be correct here, but what are they actually doing? I mean, I work in a place where you still don't see a lot of people who look like us, people of African descent, who are there working behind the scenes as well as in front of the scenes. We're still not seeing that. And it's not because there aren't people who've been trained or aren't people who are doing it, because there are. There are swathes that they have got. There are cameramen, there are lighting people, men and women, or non-gender, whatever gender. There are people there who have the work, who are of African descent, who look like us or Asian. They look different, and there aren't enough of those people. You're not seeing them there. It's then they haven't got in there because some of these places, it's almost like it's a closed shop. Some areas like lighting, for instance, that's an area that sometimes, I mean, we've all worked we all work in this industry, so we know it's almost like, well, if your uncle wasn't at lighting, you're not going to be doing it. And if your dad wasn't, so, and if your dad looks like, Mr. Smith, who was here in 1930 and did come from, then that's it. So I think there isn't enough of that been taken up. But I do take Sue's point. There are something, what can't happen is that things can't be ignored. I think it's a conversation that maybe it's for us, and I think there are moves where people are trying to do that. For instance, Ink Arts are trying to, or Art Inks, I can't remember, Amanda Parker of Art Inks. They're really trying to push. Yeah, that's right. Trying to push towards it, try and get some real solid change. And I want to be optimistic because we have to be optimistic because we have children, we have the next generation. Even if you don't have children, we're another generation now. We are the elders, as much as I like to lie about my age, but I am one of the elders, So therefore you've got to pass this baton on, and that's really important. You need to give optimism and hope, but I'm also slightly depressed by what I see is a repeat of things that happened, in the 80s. Yeah. In terms of supporting Black arts.
Yeah, I mean, I've been having lots of conversations around this, not surprisingly, and I'm shocked at the sort of the circularity of it. So I had a conversation. Anton Phillips was on the show last month, and he spoke about how in the 1980s there was this a surgence of Black theatre. There was a Black theatre season. There were, I think, and I think that's when Talawa was formed, and so it was the heyday was the 80s, and so I'm thinking, but what's happened? What did happen to all these wonderful initiatives that that you all must have benefited of, or seen and heard? Steve, do you remember that time? Am I sort of exposing your age?
Yes. When was that? Oh my goodness, I may have still been at school. No, I think you're right. I think there was a time I came into the business around 1990, my first professional job, and there was a plethora of black theatre companies. I wonder if somewhere along the line, someone somewhere thought, oh, we've solved racism or something, and now there's no need for a Temba theatre company or a Umoja theatre company, or I don't think even Black Theatre Cooperative in existence anymore. I was talking to a friend of mine, a filmmaker, and there was a point in the early to mid 90s when there were so many black directors making things. And then now it's like so many of these promising people have just disappeared. They couldn't stay in the business because there was nothing there to support them. And then the other thing that concerns me, going back to the earlier point that Suzette and Suzanne were talking about, is that with this change that we're seeing, is this worry that what they are doing is they will create a few training roles or apprenticeships for people, and you'll go through this apprenticeship or this internship, and then there's nothing for you. There's nothing that seems to actually be able to help you develop a career, particularly as somebody behind the camera, particularly as we were talking about, a writer or a lighting cameraman or something like that. You can go and do a training course, and you go and do it for, 6 months, 7 months, and they've ticked their diversity box, and then you're out there, but there's nothing else. There's no support for you. So that for me is a major concern, because that's not really structural change. It's just like the black box, Yeah,
it's tinkering around the edges. Yeah, precisely. But notwithstanding that, I mean, the three of you have having, not past tense, wonderful careers. I mean, despite that, I mean, the introductions that I gave the three of you, testimony to that. And, can we talk about current projects? So, Suzanne, you're lecturing. In addition, I'm sure there's other things that are going on as well as lecturing. So tell us about those, please.
Well, you mentioned as well, I'm doing a radio show with my brother, and that's something that I would never, ever have said was a dream. And I basically sort of said yes to it. I don't know if I even told him this, but I basically said yes because, I just wanted to support him, kind of thing. And it just seemed like a bit of a laugh, but I find it the hardest thing ever that I've done professionally. And I don't know, Steve, Suze, somehow I can't remember who said it, but acting is the revenge of the shy. I came into this because I could hide. I could pretend to be somebody else. I was never myself. I'm doing a live radio show every Sunday morning, and I've got to be me. And I'm not lying to you. That's not easy. And you know what? I said to my agent, I said, Andy, what am I doing? Why did I say yes to this? Because I started getting panic attacks. And then he said to me, make a character. So I'm sort of like becoming this schizophrenic because I'm going, right, what's the Suzanne character now? But do you know what, though? I have to say, I do not regret saying yes, because I realize, and again, and I'm not trying to be some kind of, martyr or anything. We need voices from other cultures, other ethnicities out there in the wider world. Again, I'm very mindful, like you, Sharina. I have a son who's going to step out into the world as a man, and I'm very aware of I've got to make this world a better place where he feels included and he's a proper stakeholder. And so now I realize, even though, it was sort of like, I didn't have to audition or anything, it was offered to me, but it was very important for me to say yes for those reasons. But can I just pick up on something that Steve said? And we talked, it's that thing about, you mentioned that whole thing about support. And, it made me think about, and Suze, you chime in here, when we came out as, the BB crew, we made so many headlines, we were vanguards, women of African descent, first generation British, doing our thing, entertaining people. But where we didn't get support was the backroom stuff. We didn't, we didn't have training to write our Arts Council applications. So what we found, which has probably helped, the demise of the BB Crew in its first facade, was the fact we were spending when we should have been spending creative time, reinventing new material. What we were doing was filling out Arts Council. That we didn't have training. We didn't. And that's where, when you talk about support, and, if I was an Arts Council person, I would have supported the BB Crew because there was so much potential. Even if, there was BB Crew version 2, 3, 4, maybe not with us. But anyway, Suze, I've talked enough.
No. But I was going to say, but we were also stymied. And this is the thing that we're going back to Steve's point about, your point, Sharina, when you spoke about Anton, and Steve was mentioning what happened to those companies. Well, what happened was, they were getting funding and central funding. And so what happened was those companies said, oh, well, look, we've got to support this company now. So they took away funding from some Black companies to give to other Black companies. So this could be, so what that bred was a kind of crabs in the barrel attitude, where people were saying, well, oh, why did that company get it? And we should have got it. And you don't want that in the arts, but that's what happened. And for us, if you remember, Sue, we got funding. We were very well supported by people like Philip Headley from Royal Stratford East. It was just, come on, what do you want? We'll support you. And you need more people and that was great. So he was supporting us. We got funding from the Arts Council the first time. We also got some corporate funding. We got corporate funding. We got it from Luster's Hair. We got it from a small neutral bank. A Jamaican bank we got funding from, and we got a little from the co-op. So that was something we did on our own back. When we went back to the Arts Council, because these forms are for people who fill out forms. They're a nightmare. You have to know how to do that. That's one thing. We went back, and they did say to us, yes, well, you can go back to the business people that you got money from. We were encouraged to do that because we'd managed to get that. So it's like, well, that means, oh gosh, we don't have to give you so much because you've got onto something there.
Yes.
There's so much that's not right. And the whole thing with funding is very upsetting. Somebody pointed this out, and it's quite true. Arts Council funds a lot of big companies, but a lot of those big companies are also funded by business people. I mean, Cameron McIntosh does support the RSC. So you're really going to tell me that they've got this huge, massive thing and Arts Council funding, and you're going to compare these companies,
your little shekels that you get from Luster.
It's
absolutely.
That's not on. And I think
it's not a level playing field.
It's not. And the way that they dole out the money, apart from the fact that they're giving you these things, as you say, they have people who charge to fill out these forms. And
that's right.
We get about 50 quid an hour or 150 quid an hour to fill out application forms. And you're asking.
They are a nightmare to complete.
And they get a percentage if they're successful. I mean, well, with your company. So that's something. So I think another thing with things, there has to be more, and there is a network I've heard about where Black businesses support, or just businesses that want to support Black arts. So there is a network, and of course that's a lot of the thing that we need to plug into. And I
need to talk to you about that.
So there are things where people are doing that, and people like yourself getting up and doing it. There are people. I see that with you turn on YouTube. The young people are just saying, I've got a camera in my pocket. I've got a phone. I want to tell a story. And I find that very optimistic and wonderful.
I mean, it is wonderful. And I think, sort of online platforms like this, YouTube are sort of, in a way, kind of leveling the playing field because you can go direct to your audience. But, but the Arts Council are sitting on a pot of public money. It's you and I, it's our taxpayers' money. So we are entitled to it as long as we can, sort of cross a particular threshold. The problem is that the threshold is up there. I mean, that application form is a nightmare. I mean, it will put anyone off. And if you want to get on with the business of creating, you don't want to spend literally months of your life completing one of these application forms. So there definitely needs to be change there. There needs to be a lot more support in the background. You're quite right. Otherwise, these small grassroots, arts organizations will just fall to the wayside. I mean, absolutely will. But so Suzette, what current projects are you working on at the moment? Anything you can tell us about?
Well, I'm in EastEnders at the moment, but I am also,
Yes.
of course, and also promoting the book, which is really wonderful.
Yes, you're going to be doing the lecture circuit, I'm sure, the book festivals, if they're back.
Well, where we're going to the Hay. Is it next weekend,
Yay!
Suzanne? I think it is. We're going to be at the Hay, which is just, I was like, I got very excited, very, very excited about that. So that's
wonderful.
That is fantastic. So there are lots of things with that, and I think we've got ideas about, which we won't speak about now, but we've got ideas about what we want to do with that, something bigger. During lockdown, BB Crew, we also wrote a sitcom. So we're looking and pushing that around and trying to get something for that. So we've got to keep pushing on that. So we did that.
Great.
And the BB Crew, we also have written something else that we're trying to do something with, which is again, that is very exciting. That's a project that I'm really excited about. And for myself, I mean, it's something I've been toying with, and it is I've got the title of it, She Won. That's it.
Okay.
She Won, and it's a one-woman show. So it's just like what? Right. You've got to see She Won. I know that's one. She won. You know your parents.
Yeah.
No. So anyway, so there's that I'm trying to do something with.
Oh, great! A one woman. Okay, that's fantastic.
So I'm looking. Well, we'll see. I'm talking it out now to sort of.
Yeah. You could put it out there.
Yeah,
well, it's out there now.
Myself now.
Yeah. We're going to check up.
Suzette.
Yeah.
Yes. We want to see it. No, that'd be great. And Steve, so you will be gracing. What is it? Will you be on? Is it Amazon or Netflix? Which streaming service?
So, it will be okay. So what I'm doing is I'm doing the prequel to Game of Thrones. It's called House of the Dragon. It'll be on
here.
Oh, I love that.
Look at he's dreading. Check out them dreadlocks. I think that's worth another look. Yeah. Look at that, man.
So we're shooting it as we speak, and it will be on our screens, I believe, around the middle of next year. So it's been a kind of a great 18 months for me, actually. It's been quite exciting and interesting. And while I'm doing that, I'm also trying to develop something for a broadcaster that I wrote a short, and we made it, and then lots of people seemed to like it, and then it got shown to some people who've got some influence, who then said, we'd like you to see if you can make this something bigger. So I'm working on that at the moment, but the day job is taking up most of my time at the moment.
Oh, that's
fantastic.
Very exciting.
That's
Don't forget me, Steve.
Great.
Don't forget me. I've worked with Steve before. You got to finish that.
Well, that means he's done with you, Suze. He's never worked with me.
Oh no!
Ladies, please.
I know. Don't fight over him, please. So, Suzette, you've worked with Steve in the past.
Yes.
What did you guys work on?
Oh gosh.
What did you work on?
A play called Urban Afro-Saxons.
Such a joy.
It was. It was. I want them to remount. I think I'm too old to play Patsy, though. That's the only mind you, you know what? I don't think we're too old.
Without this, I could shave this thing off. That'd be nice. It was such a great experience because Paulette Randall basically just said, I've got this idea for a play. So we all got there on the first day, and then there was like, oh, there's no script at the moment. And then we're like, excuse me, what? And we would spend time talking and improvising and creating characters. But at the end of each evening, I'd be like, so where's the scripts, Paulette? And she'd have that wonderful big smile of hers and go, don't worry. And but we did get one in the end. It was a good play, man. I really had a lovely time on that.
Two writers who were on board. Patricia
Elcock.
That's all I can remember was the cockpit. That's bad, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm leaving
Sunday, child.
Kofi.
I'm going there.
It's the Lord's day.
It's my day. It's cockpit.
Can't take her anywhere. So Suzette and Suzanne, how did you two meet? Did you meet acting or before your acting career started? How did you guys meet?
It was BB Crew,
Yeah, it was BB
but
Crew,
we
that's
but
what
we
it was.
almost weren't. We weren't BB Crew when we met. It was we did. It was a benefit, wasn't it? For
No, I wasn't there at the benefit.
we did Walking in the
Joanne.
Rain. We did Walking in the Rain, Suze. You were in that.
I know, but that was BB Crew.
Yeah, but we weren't officially BB Crew. Were we
Yeah,
officially?
we got together. Yeah, we got
Get
together.
the story right, guys.
Yeah,
My
we got
God, I
together.
just thought we got together and then we did it and then we stayed together. Oh my God, this is my memory.
No,
Oh my
that's
God,
not
I'm
right.
wrong. Go on,
Suze,
say, you tell the story.
Because it was Beverly. There was a benefit for Calvin Simpson.
That's right.
Joanne Campbell, who died in 92. I can't
97,
remember.
I think, yeah.
2002.
2002. That was it, because Viva, my daughter, had been born. So yeah, 2002. So she died then. Wonderful actress, really sad. But there was a benefit for another actor called Calvin Simpson, who was a really lovely young actor he had real talents, real chops, and he was basically doing a work as a courier. I think that's right, wasn't it? Do you remember that, Steve? He was a courier, and he was killed in his job, supplementing himself as an actor, supplementing himself and his family as an actor. And it was just so awful. Anyway, basically, they had this benefit at Theatre Royal Stratford East. A lot of actors went in and were working there then. And Joanne, Beverly, Judith, I think you were a part of the benefit as well, weren't you? There were quite a few. I wasn't part of the benefit.
Wow.
But some of those people who were involved in the benefit, some of the women decided, I think it was Judith and Beverly, they seemed to be the key movers in that, and Joanne, they decided they wanted to, why should we get together, wait until somebody dies?
Yeah.
With all this talent happening, what's going on? And there was also, I think there was the posse, there was a male group of actors who had got together and done some shows. So these women had got together and said, look, and so they contacted people they knew. So I don't know who contacted you. I was contacted by Beverly, I think, or Joanne. I can't remember, one of the two of them. And I don't know who reached out to you. Maybe it was Joanne, or was it Beverly? Do you remember?
See, I feel like I'm hearing this for the first time.
No,
Suze.
but that's how it was. And that's how it was.
I really do. In my head, I thought we
Joanne
had already. Yes,
no,
isn't
and
that
that's
funny?
why we did it for another benefit. I
Yes,
think that
and
was
then we did it for
Stephen
another,
Lawrence.
and by then we were
Yes.
BB Crew,
And then we were BB Crew.
and then we did our
So
famous Walking in the Rain.
Was the original idea always a comedy collective,
Yes.
or was it broader than that?
It was a comedy collective.
See that for me, that was so brave and refreshing to see Black women doing comedy. I mean, it was just so wonderful to see.
But prior to that, there'd been an explosion of comedy. I remember there was a lot of Black. There was like, oh gosh, Curtis Walker and Ishmael.
Yes,
there was,
yes, that's right. Yeah.
Luella Gideon and
when was
partner.
Three Non-Blondes? When was
that
Three
was
Non-Blondes?
later.
Much later. We're talking about Felicity Ethnic. She was, oh my God, she could make me rock up my bladder. She was and there was, as I said, Luella Gideon and her, I can't remember the partner. They were called Short, Sharp, and Shocking, I think they were called. But there were a lot at that time.
Angie
Lamar. And Angie Lamar, who was stellar, doing so much. Yes, of course. There were lots, and there were lots of other guys. There were a lot more guys.
And I think from a girl point of view, we were the first. As a group.
Yeah. But Angie Lamar was stand up.
Yeah, she was stand up.
Felicity was stand up. Luella and Claudette Johnson. They were stand up as a duo. And there were a couple of other people sort of bubbling underneath. So at that time, there were just lots of people doing this kind of, which was fantastic. But we were the first. And also our piece was comedy, but there was a bit of sweetness about it as well. There was dance involved. There was singing. It was, because Janet was in the troupe. And our first show looked at the sort of
Janet Kay.
Yeah, she was part of the BB Crew as well. So we had different skills, and the first show was very innovative in its way. It looked at the span of a life. So we had first of all conception, and we all had this dance. It was called the sperm dance. It was basically we had fluorescent sperm on us. It was
we're back to cock again, aren't we?
We are back to cock because you know
this is what you get when you invite Suzette on to a chat show.
You get cock.
Oh my God!
Very seminal.
But anyway, basically, we just burst out in the darkness, running, dancing around, and then it went on until we ended up at a funeral with these very old widows. So it was, it sort of took in a lot of things. And we were, as Sue said, we were critically acclaimed.
Yeah.
And
rightly so. But you're still together and you're still writing material. So we're gonna
much, but yeah, we are still together. Yeah.
Is it other than obviously without Joanne, but is it the rest of you all the same team?
No, Janet is.
We're minimised.
Yeah, we're very minimised. Janet is focusing on her singing and working mostly with Victor and Carol Thompson now. Victor Romero Evans and Carol Thompson. They're like a trio. They mostly work together now, and so she's just recording and writing and recording, but focusing on that music, which is great. Which her son is now involved in, who was born while we were doing.
Wow!
Oh my gosh!
Our first show on a level. And Beverly, who's still part of the BB crew, doesn't act anymore. She does mostly production for us and things like that. So in that respect, let me get my numbers right with a counter. There's 5 of us now acting, isn't it?
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Wow.
That's great. That's
4 of us actually. What am I talking about? Only 4 of us acting.
You've got Josephine Melville.
And Judith Jacob.
That's right.
And then Suzanne and I, the 4 of us acting. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
But 5 of us in the group.
Amazing. That's great. Great. But you're still making work. So we're obviously gonna stay tuned and see what's coming next. I just want to go to you, Steve, and ask you about Red, White and Blue. Because I think we all watched. I've got a little image of you here with John Boyega. I watched with rapt attention every Sunday, which is normally period drama on BBC TV. So black brown faces to be seen. But so this was a joy in every way. So what was it like for you being part of that, now BAFTA winning? Is it BAFTA winning or BAFTA nominated? BAFTA TV winning, I think.
I don't think it's been nominated. I don't think they've had
BAFTA TV.
I know John has got a Golden Globe, and they're trying to get Emmys. It was a joy. I mean, I'd been hearing about the project for months before, and people sort of saying to me, "Oh my God, Steve McQueen's doing this thing. You should go up for it." And I'm like, "Well, it's not up to me, And then I did go up for something on it, but for another film, and I knew I wasn't right for it, but I just wanted to meet him. So I did that terrible thing that I do when I walked in and went, "I know I'm not right for this, but let me try." And I had such a good time at the audition, but then I thought nothing of it because I just wasn't right. Anyway, but then they called back and said there's an even better part in another film. So I went back and I was lucky enough to get Ken Logan. Wow. And the experience was, it's kind of weird to say it was enjoyable considering the subject matter. But it was great to be around these wonderful actors, this wonderful, incredibly, I think, slightly eccentric director, to be saying these lines and to be portraying something that I had lived through, because Leroy is probably maybe 2-3 years older than me, if that, I think. And so one of the things that we would discuss, myself and John and Steve, was our fathers and how they were, particularly in my case, mine and Steve's case, our fathers were very, on the outside at least, quite sort of stern and this gave me a chance to kind of understand that, because of course, these are people who were in this society. They had been given a particular idea as to how they were going to be treated in the motherland. The reality wasn't the case. That must have been heartbreaking. And they wanted to save us, their children, from the same bruises and so forth. So they felt they had to toughen us up. And so one of the things was with Leroy's dad, of course, was that he told him, "Don't play with them roughnecks. You come home." And as Leroy says in the film, you wanted us more English than the English, because you're going to have an education. You're going to stay out of trouble, because if the police talk to you, you can't, it's not necessarily a 50-50 interaction. It's weighted against you. As I'm sure we have all had this from our parents, you have to try that much harder and so forth.
Yeah.
And so to be able to, to live that and try to understand this man who clearly loved his children, but probably wouldn't have, in our modern sensibilities, his way of expressing it was left wanting. But it gave me a greater understanding of my dad and his friends and so on. And the wonderful thing about it was when it aired, I was shooting something in Europe, and I kept getting phone calls from my friends going, "That was my dad, man. That was my dad. That was what you did." And I'm like, "Oh, bless, man," because that's what I wanted it to be, a tribute to those men who are heroes, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it definitely resonated on that level for me. It really made me think about what my father, what my mother must have been going through. So, when you go and you ask for something, you'll be asking for something, I don't know, like 10 pence to go to the penny shop, and you just get some gruff answer.
Yeah. What do I 10 pence for?
What did I do? And I realized it was like there was so much else going on for my mum. Yeah. Like by the time I come to ask her for 10p, it's like, really? And it really resonated with me on that level. But you also play, sorry.
I was going to say, I think also that in a lot of our cases, our parents were very young also. So, they were barely children themselves as well. Now having to deal with not only going out and making a living in a foreign country, that had shortchanged them, I think. And also they've got to bring up these children, make sure that they're sensible and don't get into trouble. I mean, it must have been, the pressure must have been immense.
It's a lot. So you then, I don't know if it was before Red, White and Blue. Sorry, I'm echoing. I don't know if it was before Red, White and Blue, but you then played the father in It's a Sin, which I watched and really enjoyed. And I was like, oh, I know him.
Yeah, it was one of those rare happy accidents that happens to actors occasionally, where you get two jobs roughly around the same time, and then you feel like a real actor. You're like, because after I've finished here, I'll be going over there to do that thing. It's it doesn't happen very often. But the joy of that was I had done, Russell T Davies had done a thing called Cucumber a few years back. And one of that was on Channel 4, I think. And one of the shows, they had another like side show that came on E4, which is called Banana. And I auditioned for that, and I played a very nice dad in it. And so I guess they must have remembered that and went, let's get Steve back to be a nice dad in this thing. And so I read it. I was like, oh my God, yeah, I'd love to be in this. I think, because again, I remember a lot of this, I'm old enough to remember some of this stuff. So yeah, it was just a happy accident. You try to pretend that you planned it all along, I wanted to change from playing this, so I thought I'd do this. But the fact is it was just luck. It just came at the right time and they wanted me.
Oh, great. Now, Suzette, you, as I said, and you have mentioned, you are Cherie, and I love this picture of you. This is like, yeah, exactly. But it's also like, I'm smiling, but don't mess with me. Look, it's like, I'm smiling, but don't mess. So, I mean, it's so wonderful to have you as a regular fixture on that show. How long have you been on the show now?
This month, it'll be 2 years.
Wow.
Which is just, But I mean, then there was the lockdown. So, but 2 years. This May it'd be 2 years. So it's.
And I know the EastEnders fans are just, so you can't let go any plot lines or anything.
No, you can't. But what I can say is, because we've spoken about it, because at the moment there's a storyline with my son, and it's a mental health storyline. I mean, that's what's happening now. And I think that's a story that's very dear to my heart, because that's something that I'm particularly, it's affected members of my family, and it's something that I'm very close to. And I think I did it for about 3 years. I was a counsellor on Sane Line, which is a mental health charity, their helpline. So I did that there because that's something that I really think is really important, and it affects our community really in a huge way in terms of people, maybe not so much now, but certainly in the past, in the 80s, I've had experience where people were seriously over-medicated and giving medication now that's not, I mean, they had something, Largactil, a drug that was called liquid cosh. It's not used now, but it was overly used particularly on young Black people who found themselves in that system. And the system, there have been changes now within the system. Some of them have been good, but some of them have not been very good. For instance, there was that thing about care in the community, whereas it sounded initially as a kind of a good idea, but then when you looked at some of the ideas were about cost cutting and looking back, and it's a service that is just so, I mean, every service they speak about as a Cinderella service, but you know, you've got areas where you've got one approved mental health social worker dealing with like 3 areas of a borough. That's another conversation. It's just really, so it's something that's very close to me. So I think they're handling the story well, and they've had mind involved, and I think it's been
well. It's really important, and I think particularly what's important and refreshing about that storyline is that they've chosen your son, because I think, I mean, from my perspective, that young Black boys aren't seen as vulnerable. They're seen as sort of like tough, but actually they're just as vulnerable as other young people growing up, and in fact more so, I think. And one of the projects we're developing at the moment at Orísun is about a 15-year-old whose mental health spirals out of control because he's expelled from school, and then things just go downhill for him then. And it's having the language to speak about it, which it's always difficult for young people to do anyway. So it's really important for shows like EastEnders to have a storyline like that, because it's a real issue. I think with young Black men. I mean, as I've mentioned, I'm a mother, and I just see how vulnerable. I mean, I grew up in a household of women, so I wasn't prepared actually for how vulnerable boys can be, and I don't think there's enough support for them at all.
No, I mean, there was
especially
something
in those sort of teenage years.
I mean, the Susie Lampu charity, whatever. I remember that I was quite shocked quite a few years ago, and she said that basically you always think of girls as being vulnerable, going out there, something bad happening to them in the middle of the night, and the charity said that actually the most vulnerable people are young men.
Yeah,
because they will be challenged by other young men or other people, or assumptions will be made about them. And then again, if you add the thing of color on that, of how people perceive young Black people, you go from suddenly being this cute creature to suddenly being this threat. And there's a wonderful painting by Tam Tam Joseph, and it starts, and there's a little schoolboy, it's called School Report, and he's there, and it says, likes music. The next one, he's got his hair, it's got a little bit long, it says good at sport, he's got afro, and then he's got locks, and it says needs surveillance. And that, I think, is so powerful in what it says. And unfortunately, that is still very true, that this beautiful creature that we've created and put out in the world is seen as some kind of threat.
Yes, that is a sad reality, and I think that's why I say I think it's so important that shows like EastEnders are dealing with that. So, Suzanne, I want to ask: are you still based in Cardiff? Are you a proud Cardiffian based in Cardiff? Or
yes, I well, just outside. But I am still a proud Cardiffian, and it's almost like a suburb of Cardiff. But yes, I am here right now.
Great. Yeah. And so now that we're easing out of lockdown, are you looking forward to getting involved again in sort of arts and theatre in your region?
Oh, big time. What's been lovely, because being at home, I've got a lot of history here. So one of the lovely things, I've been able to reconnect with, sort of prior parts of my life. I lived in London for 15 years. I lived in New York for about 4 years. And now I'm back here because Casualty brought me back here. And
you said Casualty, so I can show that.
Yeah, she brought me back. But I've been able to reconnect with with arts organizations that I had connections with before I even went to London. So I'm an ambassador for the Sherman Theatre here in Cardiff. And so we did a lot of stuff. We tried to initiate lots of arts programs to keep the theatre very current, even though there was lockdown. So I came up with an idea that we opened it up to people of colour to put stuff online, and they would then use, that sort of the passageway that Sherman has to get to be seen and promoted. And then I'm on the board of another theatre called The Other Room, which is the only pub theatre in Cardiff. So I've been helping out there, and we've had some great new writing competitions. Again, particularly emphasising, encouraging people of colour, because we're all about, especially The Other Room, and not exclusively the Sherman too, but we want to hear new voices. And the interesting thing is, we want to hear new voices, but we don't want it all to come from tragedy. And somehow, whenever you have Black voices, it somehow has to always have its the seed has to be tragedy. And it's interesting, Steve said it, the joy of working on the small acts. And even with Suze and I, having written and, been editors of Still Breathing, we've come from, even though we are so joyous to have been able to do it, and we really wanted to do what we set out to do, to extend understanding, but actually there's such a bittersweet component that it had to come out of something so dehumanizing and ugly. So we're very much, certainly here in Wales, if I've got anything to do with it, it's got to be a mixed bag. We don't want everything, because we do live, we're not monoliths. We do have very diverse, varied life experiences, and they're not all gloom and doom.
Yes, absolutely. Which makes me want to ask all of you, each of you, what was your favorite job? What's the sort of the gig that sort of you really enjoyed, that you'd love to do again? What was that one for you that you jump out of bed, you go skipping into the rehearsal studio, whatever it is?
Oh, I mean, anything with the BB crew, but definitely I want to dance with Steve again. I really do. I loved Urban Afro-Saxons. I loved it as a piece. I mean, it was flying by the seat of your pants. I don't think we got an end to the show until 2 days before. I think we'd done the tech or something. I don't know. But it was, I met some wonderful people.
Well, let's do it.
And I enjoyed that.
I mean, you've heard it here first. Let's get this collaboration going again.
I love that. And but definitely anything with the BB crew. I mean, I remember when we were flying over to New York to do our show that we produced in the company that was being invited to go there. I think I said on the plane, I said, I could die now and be happy because I just got married. And the girls thought I was being really depressed. But to me, that was like, I've just got married to the man I love. I'm going over to New York to do work, but this is what gets better.
Perfect, yeah.
Wow, that's great. What about you, Suzanne? What sort of great memories?
Let's put BB Crew aside, because that's obviously really special. Bizarrely, it's Porgy and Bess at Glyndebourne.
Wow.
And I was, because I came into this business primarily as a singer. First and foremost, I was only ever going to do musicals. And so singing was my joy. And I managed to get into the chorus of 50 at Glyndebourne, directed by Trevor Nunn. I heard Willard White every night, Cynthia Hayman. And it was one of those jobs where it was just to be around so much creativity and talent, and to be doing a show, even though written by white Jewish men, that was so rooted in what it is to be of color, to be African American. And it was just every moment was I was tingling all over with the amount of talent. That's for me.
That's great. We're running out of time, so quickly. I know it just flies by.
Sorry.
So quickly, I need to get some sort of nugget of advice from you guys for the young people, for the young creatives coming up behind you. What's the piece of advice that you would perhaps you were given that you will pass on to them? Steve, are you still thinking, Steve?
Okay, I'm. Oh dear. So many. Keep on. Believe in yourself. Someone said to me, "You can be a good actor. You can be a bad actor. Just don't ever be a boring actor." But I mean, you know what I mean. But it's like, take chances, push. Do you know what I mean? That's what it's about, because that's where you get the breakthroughs. I think that's all I can think of right now.
Thank you. No, that's really great. Suzanne?
Find your passion and find a way to make money doing it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
that's a very sensible, that's sage advice. I like that one. Yeah.
I am a teacher.
No, absolutely. Those two pieces, actually, because definitely I say that you've got to find what you want to do and then find some way of making money out of it. But definitely keep going on, do that. And the other thing I think is really important is just trust yourself. It's not, because if you're not careful, the world can get in on you, and that can really mad you. And I think your gut's probably right.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you all so much. This has been an absolute pleasure. As I mentioned, we're having a break now. We're going to be working on other projects, but we'll be back in September. And if you like the show, please tell your friends, support us. You can donate to Orísun Productions. You can go to our website and support us in the work we do, so that we're not just relying on the sweat economy, which is what's going on at the moment. But please tell everybody, tell your friends about us, and tune in again in September. Keep an eye on our socials and we'll let you know when we're back. Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Thank you.